Well, one of America's best-known universities just saw its tuition-funded lecture series fall to postmodernist identity politics, redefining free speech and academic excellence according to political agendas. Which one of hundreds could it possibly be? Well, it's Georgetown University, which also saw its lecture series team repeat the idiotic ideas that language can be oppressive and violent, particularly when it's theistic. Oh, by the way, on the subject of theism, yeah, Georgetown is a Catholic university. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. You know, sometimes we wonder, when could freedom of speech just be a slogan? When is intellectual consistency actually a burden? When is language not a tool to facilitate human interaction and the pursuit of truth, but a tool to demonize others and hide the truth? Well, the answer would be always, if one subscribes to the postmodernist collectivist mindset of Western elitists. And of course, its educational establishment seems to be pushing this a lot. Case in point, Georgetown, where the student leaders of its Georgetown Lecture Series, a series supposedly run to promote freedom of speech and academic excellence, have decided that free speech, consistency, and language are tools to be manipulated for political ends. As Dalton Nunemacher writes for The College Fix, a new policy recently announced by the student leaders of Georgetown University's Lecture Fund Speaker Series declared oppressive language is violence and pledged half its coffers for the upcoming school year to amplify black voices, which presents a few problems. First, how can language be oppressive or violent? This ties to the long-fought war on the West, waged by postmodernist collectivists, often with the fallow, pseudo-intellectual weapons of semiotics and deconstructionism, wherein teachers, professors, media chatterboxes, publishing overlords, and politicians make intellectually vacant, empirically unsupported claims about words, the use of words, and all written, spoken, or visual art. The collectivists then use those newly defined words and claims about written or spoken pieces and their creators to build a larger framework of societal imbalance, unacknowledged prejudice, and structural racism, which can only be fixed by real institutional racism instituted through government policy. But don't talk about that. As Nunemacher observes, the Georgetown Lecture Series is supposed to promote free speech and the atmosphere of academia. The tuition-funded lecture fund at the private Catholic university is described, however, as a nonpartisan student-run organization that exists to enrich the academic experience of the Georgetown community, according to its website. But of course, since more and more choices in America are being dictated by government, this lecture series has been subverted to promote postmodernist semiotics. And that's, by the way, my motion for subverted. And they will now redefine words and effectuate action not through voluntary means, but through political action. However, the mission seems to have changed due to the recent policy announcement via the fund's Facebook and Instagram pages that it will use half of its annual $85,000 budget during the 2020-2021 school year exclusively to amplify black voices. And as if the infantile swerve into racial assumptions isn't enough, the fund has pledged to prioritize the well-being of black students in the process of inviting speakers to campus because it is clear that free speech without consideration of context or history is neither free nor fair in its impact on black lives. Which reveals that Georgetown's lecture gang has reached the final stage of the postmodern metamorphosis. Free speech is not free speech. It is to be defined and controlled by the rulers, be they the mass or the vocal sect, in a constant battle to claim greater validity of context. That, of course, can be used to suppress other voices. And free speech does not mean that equal rights to express opinions shall be shared by everybody. It's not the universalizable concept that each of us can express an idea and each of us is free to listen or turn away. Not anymore. In classic Rousseauian fashion, free speech is now the adjudged fairness of outcome, determined by the gang that, in order to fix previous wrongs, will institute its own speech policing policies and overlook the fact that it engages in the same kind of systemic elitism that it decries. And to cap it off, the Georgetown Lecture Fund team quotes hardcore leftist Toni Morrison to support its new approach on free speech. The Post revealing the new policy quotes author and activist Toni Morrison to explain its new protocol. The quote reads in part, "Oppressive language does more than represent violence. It is violence. Sexist language, racist language, theistic language, all are typical of the policing languages of mastery." Talk about language policing. They're the ones who are doing it. Unbelievable. Let's get a few things straight. Things a writer such as Ms. Morrison should have figured out long ago, but which she and most of the leftist language literati police unashamedly promote. Language is not violence, and words are not violent in any way. They're tools used for good or bad purposes. If used to defame and lie, the victim can cite the user for the wrongs. But the words themselves are not violent, the same way a baseball bat isn't violent, but can be used for violent purposes. It's the witch doctor-like postmodernist practice of applying new, politically operative, untrue meanings or hidden motives to words that is aggressive and brings us to this point. It's a point that is self-defeating, for it eliminates the very meaning of language itself. It kills the ability to use any words, even the words used to relabel the old words. You can't use words in discourse without those words being targeted as evil and violent. And then those words will be targeted as evil and violent. And the ironic punctuation mark on the whole implosive endeavor is that this Georgetown group should quote Morrison's claim that theistic language of all things is violent. Because, of course, Georgetown is a Catholic university. Man, perhaps these students could recall that Genesis tells of a time and place where men tried to create an artificial, unnatural construct to adopt the pretense of being like God. It was called the Tower of Babel, and because of their folly, men and women were made to speak different languages, to be unable to communicate with one another. Postmodernism is Babel. It is an atavistic, nihilistic means of destroying the ability of people to use language without that language being torn down by others who would, in their own turn, use language to construct their own political agenda, which in turn will be torn asunder by the next group wielding linguistic weapons and demonizing words, and the next, and the next, and the next ad infinitum. Free speech is the exact opposite. It is universal and comes with no pretensions to play God and tell someone else what he or she means. It's called respect among people. Hey, thank you so much for sharing a few words with me, everybody, and we'll continue to share over on YouTube. In the comments section, I'll be there and I'll write to you. I really appreciate all the great comments from so many terrific people. Please visit MRC-TV.org to find out what the whole team is doing. Head over to the Facebook page for MRC TV, and if you want some great MRC fashions, go to MRC-store. Again, thanks so much during these crazy times. It's good to share ideas with friends. For MRC TV, using words, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.